Yeah, that intro is dope. All right. Greetings and welcome to the 5th movie night extravaganza takeover of This is Revolution podcast. My name is Forrest Miller, the host of Movie Night Extravaganza. Tonight, we'll be talking about the 1976 Black Comedy Network, which is a satire of the increasingly corporatized and consolidated world of ratings-based news. Of course, gotten way worse since 1976. But it was directed by Sidney Lumet and written by Paddy Chayefsky. In this film, a news anchor named Howard Beale, played by Peter Finch, is fired by his best friend, Max Schoonmaker, played by William Holden, after his ratings slide into oblivion. Howard Beale realizes his life has been worthless and declares he's going to kill himself on air. After being talked down, Howard Beale declares on air that he's sick of the bullshit, which becomes an incredibly popular articulation of popular rage. Of course, kind of a meme, an early proto-meme moment. Howard's newfound popularity and breakdown is cynically exploited by the programming chief, Djene, played by Faye Dunaway, who believes that the network has struck gold. Now, before I bring in the panelists for this evening, I'd like to remind you to like and subscribe to both This is Revolution podcast and my channel, Movie Night Extravaganza. You can also support Movie Night Extravaganza on Patreon, where you get access to all kinds of amazing discussions and interviews. Links are all in the description. So without further ado, let's bring in the crew. Conan Neutron, host of Protonic Reversal and frontman for Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends, and now co-host of Movie Night Extravaganza.
All right, keep it going, folks. Keep it going. Wow,
yeah,
there's gunplay involved now. Okay, this is
apparently they just tried to shoot Gerald Ford.
Yeah, apparently, yeah. So I just like to say that this is my favorite movie of all time. So I'm incredibly excited about this, and I can't wait to get into it. And I'd very much like to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times.
You want to be an angry prophet?
Oh yeah, very much so.
Hypocrisies of our times. Okay, I think we can make that happen. What did you think of that intro, by the way? You did the new song, new intro for 2022, looking good.
All new for 22. Yeah, this is
Oh, there's the second Gerald Ford assassination attempt.
At the sound of the machine gun, turn the page. This where the month of January is all like 80s fantasy movies. So I think that's a very appropriate intro for that. We have a Dark Crystal, Princess Bride, Labyrinth. I'll just all of those. And I think that's that's an appropriate theme song for those kinds of films, which I love.
No, it's good. It's good as hell. All right, we also need to bring in JG Michael, host of Parallax Views, who I guess funny story was the second guest. Was the second guest that we had on Movie Night Extravaganza. Of course, you and Jason Conan were the third guests in the next episode after that. But he made me promise coming on to the episode that we did, which was Manchurian Candidate. He made me promise that if we ever did network, he'd be on for that. So I thought this was kind of a perfect movie to do for this 5th Movie Night Extravaganza. This is Revolution Takeover. Of course, follow, subscribe, all of the above to both podcasts. Jason, can we play the trailer? Wrong movie. It's the one that I put in the network. The Google Drive thing that I sent you.
We're off to a fantastic start, everybody.
Hey, the intro was rocking.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I was like, hey, we're killing it. All right, yeah, let's keep it going. This movie's so great. Like there's so many reasons why it's great, and I can't wait to get into it. But yeah, I don't think I've ever seen the trailer. I've seen the movie like 20 times. I don't think I've ever seen the trailer. So
I like the trailer. I watched it yesterday, and
because how do you portray what this movie is?
Yeah,
right? Like I'd love to see what that is.
No, it's it's cool that they have the narrator throughout it, like kind of the voice of God narration almost, because as it becomes apparent that Howard Beale kind of obviously isn't talking to God, but kind of feels like he's talked to God. It's interesting. I think that voice, like the narration throughout it, takes on a whole different set of stakes almost.
Well, the voice of God plays a heavy role for Howard Beale.
Yeah. And it's a really interesting moment also when and of course we'll get into this too, but when Ned Beatty when that moment happens and when that moment happens and he turns around, he says he goes, "Why me?" which is the thing that he says earlier in it, and he says, "You're on TV, dummy," or whatever. Like it's a fascinating
it's a complete callback, and I actually didn't notice that until like maybe the second or third time I saw it too.
Yeah, well, I watched it for the second time yesterday, and of course, I've watched like a whole bunch of clips since then. It's one of those movies. Another movie that I think in the '80s that kind of has as much going on, and literally has a network, or not. Well, this is the '70s. A decade later, has
it's '76.
A network.
Yeah.
No, so another movie that's exactly a decade later is UHF. And it has Michael Richards kind of doing the same thing as the Howard Beale. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore.
Yeah. It's like the weird. Yeah. There you go. That's good. So it's like the Weird Al version of Howard Beale. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, the distinguished television commentator, Mr. Howard Beale.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like at this moment to announce that I will be retiring from this program in 2 weeks' time because of poor ratings. Since this show was the only thing I had going for me in my life, I have decided to kill myself. I'm going to blow my brains out right on this program a week from today.
What the hell's going on?
Prepare yourself for a perfectly outrageous motion picture.
Howard Beale went up there last night and said what every American feels, that he's tired of all the bull.
Sakes, Diana, we're talking about putting a manifestly irresponsible man on national television.
I am not putting Howard back on the air.
It's not your show anymore, Max. It's mine.
I got a feeling I'm being made.
You are.
Got to warn you, I don't do anything on my first date.
We'll see. I want a show developed based on the activities of a terrorist group.
Well, Ahmed, I'm gonna make a TV star out of you. Just like Archie Bunker.
We're the #1 show in television!
We're number one! There is no America. There is no democracy. There is only IBM and DuPont and Exxon. And you have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone. Am I getting through to you, Mr. Beale?
Why me?
It was your own television, dummy.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Network News Hour with Howard Beale.
I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore! Things have got to change."
How many stations does this go
You've
out
got to
at?
get mad! You've got to say... I want you to get up right now. Go to your window, stick your head out, and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
Are they yelling in Atlanta here?
Are they yelling in Atlanta, Ted?
I'm mad as hell! I'm not gonna take it
anymore! Network by Paddy Chayefsky. Directed by Sidney Lumet. Produced by Howard Gottfried.
Hell yeah.
Television.
I'd go see that movie. Although with all the like focusing on like the thunder and lightning, it makes it seem like more ominous in a way different way than the actual movie is ominous. But
yeah, I agree with that. So I wanted to start at the beginning, I guess, though. Mm-hmm. And I think this movie, I mean, the reason that it feels so prescient, or it feels so kind of predictive of our current moment, is obviously that we're living in this age of neoliberalism, which kind of this movie is obviously made at the neoliberal turn. And I think the media is a perfect thing to focus on because, you know, everything is based on metrics, you know, how much money someone's making, like even things that aren't going to make money, like public schools. And I think The Wire is a show that really, really portrays this well. But like, you know, it's all about metrics. How many kids got an A? How many kids, you know, who's passing, who's not? How many kids are going to graduate? And I think that, you know, starting this movie off with the grand old man of news with a HUT rating of 16 and a 28 audience share. And then it says, you know, over time, he fell to a 22 share. And then, you know, his wife died and he starts drinking and he falls to an 8 rating and a 12 share. And he gets fired over that, is kind of showing in a really, you know, I think the news media, the ratings-based news, like these news corporations, are a perfect way to show that kind of every part of your job performance, every part of your life is kind of now based on these metrics. And these metrics kind of, in this case, obviously, is the audience. In other cases, it's, you know, how much do you sell of something? But it's all based on numbers. And like, it's this obsessive neoliberalization of everything, where, you know, all of a sudden you're not a person anymore. You're dehumanized the same way that they're touching on in this movie. And suddenly you're just kind of a series of numbers.
Well, I think I've been doing a lot of talking, so we should probably hear from JG Michael, but I just think it's amazing that the news didn't used to be something that had to make money. It was the news. You lost money because it was the news. Yeah. And this is not only marks the beginning of that change, it accurately predicts the, you know, infotainment, opinion, industrial complex, and the news as entertainment. Really, like news as entertainment, and it all started with caring about the ratings.
By the way, yes, it is the Better Call Saul thing, and that's they advertised it like pretty heavily in the first episode. I remember when the premiere of Better Call Saul comes out, and he goes, "You will atone," and then after that, the reaction to that, he's like, you know, Ned Beatty in Network, and everyone looks at him blankly, and he's like, all right, whatever, and storms out of the room.
Right, as if I needed another reason to be hooked into that show. I was like, hell yeah. They're like referencing my favorite movie of all time. That's awesome.
Saul Goodman as a character, I think, is an amazing character to kind of be obsessed with that movie, right? Because he's someone that's not a TV personality in that show, but he is someone that knows how to use TV to manipulate people. And throughout the course of Better Call Saul, he becomes obsessed with, you know, his lawyer. Like you can assume maybe that, you know, they're trying to show that he's the first lawyer to kind of do that thing that all lawyers kind of do now, where they're ambulance chasing on TV.
The TV ads, yeah. Everyone's got their local lawyer that has the ads on the TV. It doesn't matter where you're at. They have like the jingle, like whatever.
The first time you see him on Breaking Bad is when he's on TV and he's like, "Did you know you have rights? Well, you do, and the Constitution says so too."
Yeah, right.
So I was gonna say, in relation to the media critique that Network is making, one thing I was telling you, Forrest, the other day was I think it's always important to realize that I think Chayefsky, the writer of it, as someone who was involved in Hollywood, was sort of seeing what was happening with news media at the time. There was a sort of process of infotainment happening as he was writing it. You had figures in the 60s like Joe Pine, who were based out of California, creating what is known as combat television. In other words, what would later become Jerry Springer, Morton Downey Jr., and then, you know, ultimately evolve into what we have with, you know, Alex Jones and Bill O'Reilly and the 24-hour news cycle. And I think Chayefsky was very aware of that. And also you had things like the Vidal-Buckley debates, which there's an interesting documentary about it from 2015 that examines how that debate in 1968, the ABC did in place of the DNC convention. That debate was so heated and you know, it was sort of like trading barbs and more of an insult fest. Although I think, you know, I like Vidal a lot, but it was an infotainment sort of spectacle.
That's the famous one where he calls, is that the one where he calls Buckley a crypto Nazi and then Buckley?
Yeah. And it was a big rating success because it was such a spectacle to see that big fight between the two, you know, with the crypto Nazi barbs and all that.
I actually have Jason has a clip of Paddy Chayefsky talking about this exact thing. Last night I was searching for an interview with him because I knew you were going to bring up that part of it, and I wanted to find something. And the one interview, I guess, is actually kind of, I mean, not sketchy, but like the one place I could find an interview. Like someone had taken an interview that he did, like one of the few TV interviews that he did, and they like turned it into like this strange, like almost Scanner Darkly style like video. And then they're like, oh, if you want to see the original one, like I have a link to it, and it's like on somebody's Drive folder. So I cut a clip of that. Wow. Jason, do you have the Paddy Chayefsky clip that I had in that folder? Yeah, there he is.
That answer your question? There you go, Paddy. Let's go, baby.
About network.
Yes, they have.
Yeah. How do you feel about it? What they're saying, or how you feel about it?
I think it's a terrific film.
You can say it. It's daytime.
I think it's a hell of a film.
I could say it too. He's modesty.
In network.
Well, it might be having buffering.
Thank you.
Well, you know I feel that way. But the thing that I want to know is, everyone has an opinion of what you're trying to say in the movie. What are you trying to say? What kind of statement?
Well, I think what I'm trying to is, how do you preserve yourself in a world in which life doesn't really mean much anymore? And
wow.
That's what I was trying to say, but the trick, of course, is to say it so that it's a good movie.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think I went into this with some kind of a reformist attitude, as if I were attacking television because of what should be done, what's wrong with it. It's not at all. People don't start off writing things that way. They start off to make a good movie, or they usually start off to make a great movie. They settle for a good movie around the first day of shooting, and then they're just glad to finish it by the time they finish. But the point that I really was trying to say is how I feel about the world around me right now. This is what all writers do. They write about themselves. It seems to express the feelings of a lot of other people, though.
Yes, the dehumanization is the aspect that I touched on in the intro, and I think that's it is without our control
from our functions.
I also got a feeling, Paddy, in watching the film, that we were so controlled by mechanics, by numbers, by demographics, by machinery dictating what, especially in television.
Most of the people who maintain that network is a brutal attack on television are only looking at the tip of the iceberg, aren't they, really?
Well, it's not a brutal attack at all. In fact, I don't think most of the people who have called it a brutal attack, that many people died. It's just a few people in the networks. After all, it's a satire about television. You know, and it's a very funny picture. And most of the people I know, I heard, for example, at Channel 7, Goldenson and Elton Rule both adored the picture. Dave Tebbutt adored the picture. A lot of people at NBC adored the picture. CBS, I'm not too sure about. They're a very image-conscious network.
Oh, really? It's a big eye. Yeah. Don't forget. But it talks about...
But it isn't a brutal attack, really. It's, I don't think so. It's murderous, but not brutal.
That's right. Painless. But that murderous can be...
It's not really an attack on television.
You feel it was an honest observation? Otherwise, I don't think it could spew forth from you.
It's true. I mean, if anybody tells you it's not true, it's true. Every bit of it is true.
That's really kind of frightening.
That's what they say. They say it isn't true. It is true.
It deals with the news operation and how it is manipulated.
That scene with Ned Beatty is true?
That's what's so.
Oh, my God.
That's kind of scary.
The thing that people, you know, we all talk about ratings like it's some kind of a game, you know, there's sort of a World Series that the networks play. At the end of the year, hey, I'm the champ, that ABC's the champ this year. Ratings is money. That's all ratings are. 1 point in the ratings is millions of dollars. I think they're getting, what, $150,000 for a commercial minute of time now? In a prime time show at 7 minutes, that's $1 million for one show of income that comes into the network. Now you're talking about a multi-million dollar industry. As big as steel, as big as electronics. It's an enormous industry. And right now it's an industry dedicated to one thing, profit, and the only responsibility they have is to their stockholders.
The interesting
thing... And that, I think, is worth knowing, that what you see on television is what's getting money for the network. And it's not true. What the stuff you see, television is a great entertainment industry. That's what it is. I think we do entertainment on television better than any place in the world. I mean, that's what television is for. You're bored, you want to enjoy yourself, you want to be amused, you turn it on and you have a good time. But unfortunately, it has a power that transcends anything in the world today. It has a power that that deals with the fact that 95% of this country is television saturated. That means 95% of our people get their information from television and television only.
Yeah, and just
Could I add something to that real quick?
Yeah.
Yes.
I just wanted to say,
hey, Patty, can you add something to? Oh, Patty's gone.
It's so fascinating because I was thinking while watching that, you know, it was only a few short years later that we ended up with the Reagan presidency, right? And I mean, you know, I mentioned Gore Vidal earlier. He wrote that great essay about Reagan's ascendancy to the White House. Said, you know, he's sort of like the ultimate TV president. And I've talked to people that actually interviewed Reagan before he was in the White House that sort of said the same thing, that he would dodge questions. He was more interested in spectacle than debate. John Barber, who interviewed him for a TV show in California, actually relayed that to me at one point. And I think it's interesting that only a few short years later, we really do get the ultimate Hollywood president, or the ultimate, TV friendly president.
Well, I think that, you know, Reagan's kind of the ultimate Hollywood president, right? Like the golden age of Hollywood. Like he reminds everybody. I was listening to Blowback today, and they're talking about, you know, how like there's kind of the roast of like this, or no, actually I was listening to I've listened to so much stuff in the last day that it's saturated my mind. I was listening to The Invisible Bridge, and and they made the point that, like, you know, nostalgia had the Rick Perlstein book, and they made the point that nostalgia has crept over everything within this time period, like, you know, late 70s, early 80s, that that kind of by the time Reagan takes power, people kind of are craving this they're craving this you know, this feeling like Dean Martin's on TV with Reagan, like you know, like Jimmy Stewart's on TV with Reagan. Like there's all of these different like figures that had been in the golden age of Hollywood, and people are
I think you even see it in film, right? I mean, think about when Network came out, and then what came out after Network. You know, movies like Star Wars. And I like Star Wars as much as the next guy, but it's a very different kind of film. You know, Spielberg movies, I think, are different from something like Network. And yeah, I think as we headed into the 80s, people didn't want to have these, you know, questioning the sort of status quo type movies.
So the point that I was going to try to make is that Reagan's kind of the perfect golden age of Hollywood president at a time when people kind of needed that, right? Like, or felt like they needed that. Like they needed this like reassuring, calm grandfatherly figure to be on, you know, to be in front of them and say, like, don't worry, I have control over this. It's okay to be patriotic. It's okay to not be obsessed with because throughout the Invisible Bridge,
we're returning to optimism, and you know, none of this.
And throughout the Invisible Bridge, Rick Perlstein makes the point that, like, kind of Reagan was the only person that was willing to defend Nixon throughout the entire Watergate scandal, and like the people around Reagan were like, no, you can't do this. Like, you can't keep defending Nixon. And he's like, you know, he had the 11th commandment, which is like, you know, you don't talk badly about another Republican. So he like kept doing that for a really long time. And I feel like Trump coming into it's interesting watching Network after the Trump era, because I feel like Trump is like the perfect reality TV president. You know what I mean? Like he was the reality TV star president, and Reagan was the golden age of Hollywood president. And it's interesting to see, like, there's definitely a through line, and there's a through line I think that's really well tracked, like before its time, by something like Network, where they're kind of looking at like the point of you know, TV, and like people really want someone to say like what they're feeling, the anger of it. And this is the second generation, like the TV generation that you know, Faye Dunaway represents in this movie. And it's like the ultimate, I think the ultimate realization of that is like the Trump presidency.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a lot. Yeah. Okay. So there's like 15 different topics to talk about, and I'm trying to think about which one to even approach. But let's start with the fact that we saw a really cool speech by Paddy Chayefsky. This is one of the few movies where the writer is just as important, if not more so, than the director.
More so, I'd say.
And the taut writing in this is one of the reasons why it's so memorable, and why like some of these monologues still ring through like all of time and make this a classic. Most movies would be lucky to have one like memorable monologue. This one has like 4. Not to mention just the baseline of, everybody like talking to each other. Like, Sorkin wishes he could write dialogue like that, right? And it's pretty interesting that like the move away from the writer as an important figure kind of became a factor in the 80s in a lot of the ways. But Paddy Chayefsky was like seeing all of these things, like we mentioned the Vidal-Buckley debates. Yeah, he was seeing like the weaponization of spectacle. And again, going back to like what I said earlier, that it used to be the news lost money because it's the news. But this began like the news as entertainment era. That's when this started. And like when CNN came into the picture, then, go down the line. Well, what's a national extension? Fox. Then Fox turns into, you also get MSNBC, and then you have like warring talking heads. You have the threat down over on one side, and you have Russia on the other. And the whole thing is just, a narcotic to keep people hooked on whatever they're pushing next. And this movie is incredibly prescient because it pretty much forecasts all of that. And up to including some what were considered like darkly sardonic elements of like, well, they're going to give like, the Black Panthers a show. It's going to follow Howard Beale's and this and that. Things that like at the time were like, that would be hilarious if that happened. And now it's like, that's probably on a cable station somewhere, as long as it's been commodified and neutered and made sure that like nothing actually that dangerous gets out there. What this movie shows more than anything else is the commodification of dissent and rebellion. Which they take something very pure, which is a humanistic expression of absolute rage, a howl in the wilderness with a preacher with a gun in his hand sort of mindset, and then they manage to make it like the Arsenio whoop. When they show the later version of the show and they're like, "Hey everybody, what time is it? We're mad as hell and we're not gonna take it anymore." Like they turn to it like it's like no, you're missing the point. You're missing the point of all of that. But it's so perfectly done because you're like, oh God. They did it.
And the idea of Vox Populi, like the voice of the people, being like just another commodified spectacle within
it's
this
a segment on
like...
the show. Yeah. but I mean, I guess if you guys want to talk about Reagan, we can talk about Reagan too. I don't think that's remotely as interesting as this movie, but I think it ties into the zeitgeist of like, look at 76 to 80, right? You had Carter. Carter's a complicated figure. I think the left often misunderstands a lot of what Carter did, but you had a bunch of scary shit happening. You had a bunch of things like, the hostage crisis and stuff like that Reagan's treacle of like morning in America. Hey, weren't the 50s great as long as you're a white dude like me? That was something that was alluring to people. You don't have to think that hard about it. And that was a real thing in the national sentiment after like these gas price hikes and, OPEC and whatever. Like, so, and again, context is everything, right? And some of this stuff I was real busy being a baby for, so I didn't exactly have all the context. But I think it's notable to like look at like the larger picture of it, and that like, there's a real reason why the 80s fell into nostalgia and why the yuppies basically completely betrayed all of their 60s roots for rebellion, because what is it? I didn't sell out. I bought in, like whatever. I can't remember what the phrase is, but anyway. That's enough.
I think hitting on the Carter point is really interesting because if you read the Rick Perlstein books, which I referenced, we'd
like to welcome our sponsor, Rick Perlstein, by the way. Thank you.
No, but I mentioned, well, they kind of track this. They're kind of tracking like the mood of the times, right? Like Watergate and where it goes from there. And I think the way that Rick Perlstein writes about Jimmy Carter and kind of chronicles Jimmy Carter's rise is related to, but kind of opposite from the Howard Beale thing. And it's interesting that it's kind of happening at the same time in the sense of this movie comes out, within a couple weeks of the 1976 election. being over. So they couldn't have, I mean, you know, Paddy Chayefsky or, you know, Sidney Lumet, like they couldn't have known that this was going to be what happens because, you know, they had written it long before that. But there's the idea that, you know, people are so burned out by Watergate, so burned out by like the Church Committee, and Frank Church had run for president, you know, twice within this period. Like it's just so burned out with realizing that the government had completely failed us and there's no solutions. And, you know, every time that someone tries to do a solution, they uncover more shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like the CIA, like for the first time realizing what the CIA has done, for the first time realizing how failed everything really is, Watergate. And I think Carter takes kind of an optimistic tone, but at the same time, like the whole I promise I'll never lie to you promise that he makes during that 1976 campaign. But at the same time, it's kind of a similar thing, right? Like people want honesty. People want that pure honesty. People want that rage, or at least their feelings, their feelings confirmed by somebody in a position of power where it's like, no, this is really fucked up. And I understand it's really fucked up. And I think Carter leads to an age of kind of, at first, complacency where it's like, all right, well, this is at least a new person, a person that's promised on TV that he'll never lie to me. Let's vote for this person in a massive, you know, wave. But instead of Ford, who's the person who literally like pardoned Nixon. But, you know, I think that there's a channel to that. Like there's a channel to kind of people wanting someone to express the popular rage, whether they know what to do about it or not. And then you hit Howard Beale.
Well, people,
like, yeah.
I was going to say real quick. I mean, I was thinking about this movie in terms of Watergate and, you know, some of the commentary of the day's comments about Watergate. And one thing you hear in a lot of the commentary about Watergate, I think even Gerald Ford used the term a national nightmare to describe Watergate. And Irving Kristol, Bill Kristol's dad of all people, wrote a whole article called The Nightmare of Watergate, where he talks about, you know, how are Americans, how are we as a people supposed to be operating in this kind of world where we can't even trust our government and they act irrationally and in ways that are against our core values. And it really, I think, inflicted a sort of psychic trauma in a way on the American mind, you know, the American psyche. And I think that looms large over the Carter years and this film.
But so I would agree with that, but I also think that, and you guys may disagree, that I think there's a very bold and timeless depoliticization of like mentioning specific political figures, which is one of the reasons why, like, I think in like one of his, you know, when the show gets totally mersh, one of his monologues, he mentions like, you know, the Arabs and the oil crisis or whatever, and that could be misconstrued. But other than that, like, it's not grounded towards any specific, you know, one president or administration along those lines, which is one of the reasons why, hey, not only are all these still problems, if anything, it's worse than it was before.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not even like seven corporations.
That's why it works. It's one of those movies that is commenting on a lot of the things happening at the time or playing off events happening at the time, but it's doing so in a way where it can still feel prescient later on because we deal with a lot of the same issues today.
It's very deft in that way, yeah.
The one time that it does connect itself to a political figure is to express the fact that, you know, in two different times within the same time period, Squeaky Fromm had tried to shoot President Ford. So like the one way it connects itself to kind of this, because it doesn't really matter who the president is. And I think during the Ford administration, there is a feeling that it doesn't really matter who the president is. You know what I mean? Like Ford is kind of the most accidental president we've ever had. Like
the best thing I could say, he was like a caretaker president, right? Is what they call it. Which are really like, okay, you're basically just doing the will of your corporate donors and like shut the hell up and try not to trip over that. Oh, never mind.
You know, he's trying to whip inflation now or whatever, but
yeah.
No, but
I found one of those buttons at a thrift store in South Dakota on tour once. I was like, wow, that's I wish I knew the story of how this came to be here.
But the one moment it connects itself to Ford is kind of this, you know, it's no longer seen as this like incredibly shifting moment the way it was after the Kennedy assassination, that somebody assassinated or tried to assassinate a president. Suddenly it's almost like a punchline. You know what I mean? Like they're sitting there in the white writer's room and they're like, oh, someone tried to shoot at Ford again. And number one, it's this numbness, I think, that the media and, you know, the news kind of all of a sudden has to tragedy and death. And, you know, William Holden makes the point at the end, like Max Shoemaker at the end of it makes the point to Diana, where he's like, listen, you are television incarnate. You are like, you know, war doesn't mean anything to you. Suffering, you're indifferent to suffering. But, you know, they start from the very beginning where it's like, so like, they're just listing off tragedies that have happened. Like, you know what I mean? Like someone tried to shoot it forward for the second time. Like, you know, everything's in default. Oil prices are up. Like, and then it makes perfect sense that the leap from that kind of, the sense of, because those are, you know, those are older, probably media people that are having those conversations. But when they start talking about, you know, the Liberation Army, that's, you know, yet another heiress has been kidnapped. And this time,
yeah,
you know,
because it's considered like that's just what happens now. That's just like what we do. And like so here's, and I hate to interrupt, but like I want to bring up the point that like replace that with like school shootings, right? It's not any different. Like it's just something that everyone's like, oh yeah, that's just it. Another school got shot up. Well, that's what happens.
No, 100%. No, you're 100% on point with that. And it's like all of those things, like we've gotten, it's not just now the news media that's kind of callous to that, or like the television generation. It's everybody. You know what I mean? That's been completely drained of that. Oh, and sometimes someone will kind of scream out into the ether in a similar way to Howard Beale and be like, "This isn't okay. This is another school shooting." Everyone's like, "Yeah, like it's terrible. Like thoughts and prayers." Like,
yeah,
that's how you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well. So the an important thing with that too, and I don't mean to dominate the conversation, but I'm gonna, is that the you gotta remember
that's gonna be the movie Extravaganza. I don't mean to.
But the thing is, like, you got to remember at this time, there wasn't the type of media that we have now, meaning that there wasn't the type of media options that we have now. It was really like the big networks. And like when they talk about like, hey, 60 million people were watching you last night, that's because it was like you had these amazing, everyone remembers where there are moments because everyone was watching the same show. They were all watching the same newscasters. They were all watching the same newscasts. So the idea of there being, we do not have something remotely close to that. I know it may seem like we have these inflection points. It may seem like we have these moments that are like, everyone remembers where they're at. And that's true, but everyone has their own filtered experience now. So that's something you got to take into account, that like,
and
even
a cultivated experience,
experience. And
like
usually
your experience is now, not to railroad over your point, but it's the kind of the commodification of your own experience. Like
100%
even your own experience to these major, hinge points, to use the Matt Christman term, like those hinge points even are cultivated to you, where it's like, hey, let me try to give you a news article based on this moment that you're going to really love.
Well, and I don't know if you guys have had this or not. I have literally seen, for breaking news events, I've seen memes and hot takes before actually finding out about the actual events, which I find absolutely horrifying. But that's like standard issue now. Whereas, at the time of network, it was like, hey, there was these trusted men, always men, usually men of a certain age. And they were the guys that were trusted to like give you the news, which was just that, the news, not an opinion.
Walter Cronkite, Howard Beale,
Dan Rather, yeah. Yeah, but it's we don't have that anymore, and it's impossible. And like whatever, like when I was like a little kid, it was like the tail end of that. Like CNN originally changed all that, then it became Fox News, then MSNBC, the balkanization of like cable, and then like opinion infotainment, so on and so on. And the thing is, all of those things divided up the audience to the point that now you have like everyone's YouTube shows. You could like just sit there, get all your news from like TYT if you wanted to.
I was going to say,
which I recommend more than CNN or
I mean, between the two of them, of those your choices.
One of the really interesting aspects of the movie to me is the whole subplot with the Mao Zedong hour. Because
that's so good, yeah.
I think that's a perfect thing to bring up on This Is Revolution, by the way.
Well, I think even alt media in some ways has become spectacle-like at times, right?
All of it is. All of it is.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in ways there's other movies from the 70s that are sort of critical of like 60s counterculture and what could be perceived as the mistakes of the 60s movies like Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry, and Fritz the Cat, Ralph Bakshi's Fritz the Cat. But this one is like really, to me, one of the penultimate critiques, saying, well, you could be fooled.
Hey, JG, come on, say the line. Say the line. No, I wanted to just say Parallax.
Yeah. Parallax. Well, any of the three. Well, I knew you were going to try to get me to do that. Yeah. Any of the three Pacula movies, the Paranoia trilogy. This movie actually, it's weird. In a lot of ways, to me, it's one of the quintessential 70s movies because it plays off some of those movies I mentioned that critique the 60s hangover. And it also has the sort of paranoid thriller aspect to it that you see in those Pacula movies like The Parallax View and Clute and All the President's Men, Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation.
Conversation, which was on cable the other night, and I was like, hell yeah, Conversation.
But it really takes a lot of elements from that were in the air in all of these different 70s films, and it puts it into one package. For me, it's one of the quintessential political 70s films.
Well, and I don't want to spoiler alert for people for this movie that came out in 1976, but it's important to note that at one point they very calmly discuss how to deal with the Howard Beale problem, because they know if they fire him, one of the other networks are just going to pick him up and it's going to be their competition, right? So they start discussing, well, we can just have him killed. And they're just in a boardroom discussing it.
Kind of a CIA kind of assumption, right? Like the church committee was kind of going on at the same time. And the moment that we've kind of realized, oh shit, our government kind of just assassinates people. And in the same way,
but this isn't the government. This is a private corporation.
No, 100%. That's what I'm. So it's all of a sudden it goes from our government can just assassinate people to like a corporation because they set it up.
And there's another connection to the Parallax View.
Right.
It's in the plot.
Say the line. Anyway,
but it's the same thing in the fact that you're removing a problem, right? So in this case, instead of like removing like the elected leader of a South American country, you're getting rid of your populist bummer, because at that point he's a bummer because he's just basically telling things exactly like how it is, and people don't want to hear it anymore. The novelty's like worn off, right? And there's no hope to it, because the key, and I'm going to say this again because I think I mentioned it earlier, but it's when I was mentioning a lot of things, the key to Howard Beale's impassioned rants, and one of the reasons why, like for me, I still get chills when I open up your windows, go outside and yell, like
get up out of your gamer chair.
Turn off your gamer chair. Turn off your Twitch. Yeah, is that there's a deep humanism that Howard Beale is coming from. Like it's very easy to be like, oh, angry white man, great, who gives a damn? No, that's not it at all. This is a guy that literally in the first couple minutes of the movie, I'm gonna kill myself. I've got nothing left to live for. Like he's not. It's not hyperbole. He really not only believes it, he announces it on air, which is a great moment because the people in the control room don't even notice. They're just busy talking amongst themselves and producing a news show. And it was like, hey, do you see Beale said he's going to kill himself on air? What? He didn't say that, did he? What?
No, and it makes it heartbreaking, like actually heartbreaking when after the entire Ned Beatty speech where he realizes, no matter what he says to, inspire people towards this humanism, no matter what he says to kind of get the news to be, because really, I mean, his whole thing with
it's a merger. The merger is the thing. He starts talking about the Arabs, the company buying out the.
But you hear Bernie Sanders making the same. Like I don't know. I just imagine Bernie Sanders be like, "Did you know that our media is consolidating?" But it makes it completely heartbreaking when he kind of
Well, he has that line, right?
Yeah.
I have seen the face of God.
Yeah, and then
it happens twice. It happens right before the turn to like make him like the Howard Beale, like the mad prophet of the airwaves, and it happens again at the end of the incredible Ned Beatty speech, which he's in that movie like 5 minutes, and it's astounding. Like, are you going to play that clip?
Got nominated for an Oscar.
And he should have. I mean, that's up there with the Coffee is for Closers Only dialogue monologue.
You have meddled with the forces of nature, Mr. Beale, and I won't have it. I don't know. I wanted to do that sometime with the
I feel like you probably pulled that clip and want to play it, but I know we only have an hour for this now.
No, I didn't.
Okay,
pull
all
that
right.
clip, but I do have one more clip. That I'll.
It's basically capitalism in action. It's like Ned Beatty's character explains the whole corporate mindset. Neoliberal democracy, the entire push towards like why no fundamental change can occur in like a 4-minute speech.
I probably will play it when we do our after hours.
What one of the
I have one more clip that I wanted to play for you guys, and it's Sidney Lumet talking about his experience, and he kind of admits that this is a Paddy Chayefsky film. Like he kind of admits that it's he's the one that's
he's articulating Paddy's vision, and what's funny is also that like Paddy Chayefsky.
By the way, Jason, you need to show your super chat some love. Apparently, that's the comment.
This is also Paddy's high watermark too. Like he never, like, as much as he may not want to admit it, but like this is sort of like as good as it got for him, which is kind of it's pretty great. It's a timeless film.
I'm not qualified to answer this $10 question.
Oh my god. Words.
I need to call.
Fascinating things about
phone a friend.
Yeah, phone a friend.
He writes a character whose protest becomes a byword today.
I don't even.
There's absolutely nothing about it. There's no action from then on in. He only continues with something which began before he made that speech, because it's when he's still in his normal anchorman's clothes and when he's still comparatively sane that he says, I just got tired of the bull. He's clearly in a psychotic state in that scene. He's left the house in his pajamas and a raincoat, walking through a thunderstorm. That nothing changes in Howard Beale when he says, I'm mad as hell, I'm not going to take it. And one of the brilliant...
Buffering.
He would never be sentimental enough to make a difference. Which shot.
This seems like that's going to be great, but yeah. Anyway, so the cave. The thing about the cave is it's a study in contrast.
I'll play that clip, I guess, when we go to the after hours.
Yeah, that's fine. You guys want to take a crack at that super chat? I think it's interesting. I'm too rusty with all my philosophers, so except for the ones I like quoting. So my bad, y'all.
I mean, I don't know. I definitely haven't looked into.
Well, okay. So what's the whole deal with the cave, right? So it's like basically a group of people that've been chained to like the cave for their entire life, and like,
you know what? I was going to say the curating experience.
Who can call Ben Burgess and he'll answer? Because he won't answer.
It's really interesting because there's that whole line where I think William Holden's character says to Diana, Faye Dunaway, her entire experience of the world, everything she thinks and does is based on what she has seen on television. She thinks everything is a TV plot,
and also like, isn't it, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but isn't the thing with the cave is like that these people there in the cave, they've never known anything different than that, right? Like they've never known like a better life. They know anything from it. So it's sort of like a This Is Water situation, which is sort of television.
Yeah,
exactly. So, and again, I can't believe that, like, we're almost over with the show and we still haven't talked about how Faye Dunaway is the quintessential, like,
I want to talk about that, but if I could for a second, for me, Faye Dunaway,
she's the perfect. Wait, I wanted to get both you guys' take on this. Okay. I said this in my Letterboxd review. Letterboxd, a place for film. I feel like Faye Dunaway's character is kind of if this is kind of the story of a neoliberal turn, right? Like this is a moment in time. It's one industry. it's probably not seen as that by Paddy Chayefsky, but like it's kind of the story of this neoliberal turn. Everybody's obsessed with metrics. Faye Dunaway's character is the perfect neoliberal subject. She does not exist outside of her work. She does not exist outside of television. She does not exist outside of like any of these like, and she says it throughout this, like, I'm kind of not good at anything like besides my job. Like, you know, like I'm too
She's a career woman. Yeah.
That's all she thinks about. Well, she's the perfect. So what I was gonna say at the end of what I was saying before was that she's like the perfect, like just not evil, but just no moral code, like an absence of moral code PMC type. Just to use you know, our friend's phrase and like, but like this is 76. So again, prescient in a way that you have like how different is Faye Dunaway from like Mayor Pete? You know, like not that different, frankly.
Well, the thing is, if the key to
she's way hotter than Mayor Pete.
Well, I mean,
well, this is true. if the key commentary in the film,
I was thinking it, I wasn't gonna say it, but
hey, Conan, did you know there's a documentary about Mayor Pete?
My God, I'm gonna walk right off this show. JG, continue.
Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me?
The key commentary in the film is about dehumanization in like hyper capitalist society.
God is that you?
Why let JG talk? That's what God is saying. Let JG talk.
So if the key commentary of the film is about dehumanization, and Bill throughout the movie is struggling to say stop dehumanizing yourself, in a way the ending of the movie, which we won't spoil, but I'll put it this way. I mean, that's the
movie's
point.
older than I am.
Loses her humanity.
Yeah, you ain't seen this bitch in 45 years. You ain't gonna see it now. So tell the ending.
Well,
tell the ending, JG. Don't be no punk, JG. Tell the ending. If they haven't seen this motherfucker in 45 years, they ain't gonna see it now.
Hey, JG, can you say you're on TV, dummy?
No.
Be the voice of God.
I was gonna say, did you guys ever? Are you old enough to remember Cheers, Forrest?
Well, I mean, I've watched Cheers. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you're like 12 years old. Me and Conan are old as shit. I found gray hair on my testicles the other day, so I'm old as shit.
No.
I didn't have cable as a kid, so I found like old stuff like Cheers on YouTube and was trying to watch that.
Oh wow, that's a sad life. Everybody else is watching people get hit in the nuts, and you're like, "You guys see Cheers? It's this great show from the 90s."
Will Sam and Diane get together or not? Yeah.
But do you remember Kirstie Alley? Speaking of Faye Dunaway, do you remember Kirstie Alley's character on Cheers?
Oh yeah.
A very driven stereotype of the quote unquote 80s businesswoman that is only motivated by power. And she only wants a man that can put her in a higher position of power. And her character is often juxtaposed to Norm's character, who is kind of this downwardly mobile accountant, a very forgettable cog in the corporate machine. So where they both work in corporate America, they're the only ties in that show really to corporate America. She is this upwardly mobile female character where Norm is a downwardly mobile,
but he's zen about it. He's zen about his station. Like he's the proletariat hilariously enough in a show about a bar where nobody is allowed to drink because it's never.
Have any of you guys been watching Secession?
We got 5 more minutes in this show, and we're talking about unrelated TV shows.
No, but Secession has Chiv as the character who, Tom Wamsgams, her husband, is, or later in the show, her husband is kind of trying to ingratiate himself into this corporate ladder, and she wants somebody far under her that kind of is gonna, within a power struggle, is never gonna challenge her power position, and so that's kind of a similar dynamic. But yeah, we only have 5 minutes left of this show.
Well, Faye Dunaway's character is quintessentially an early PMC type, and in the way that like you can look at it as like the what is it, ambitious career woman, right? Was the phrase that you used throughout the 80s.
Stereotype though, Conan? Would you guys call it a stereotype?
I call it an archetype.
I mean, this is a satire. So yeah,
this is a satire, and I call it an archetype. And I think she's perfect. She's perfect in her.
For me, I have to be honest. She's the best part of the movie for me, and I think
she's amazing.
The whole story of her losing any sense of morality by the end of it is sort of what I was getting at earlier. That to me is the heart of the film. You know, it's really terrifying to see what she's willing to do by the end of the film.
It's completely subjective. Like what little morality there is completely out the window the second it turns the bottom line.
Yes.
Like everyone loves Howard Beale. They love commodifying the scent of Howard Beale. They love it until it screws with the merger. And in that case, like, no, we got a problem here. And then Ned Beatty gives the speech. And after Ned Beatty gives the speech, then it just becomes depressing. Oh, we don't like watching like him anymore. He's depressing now. So then they kill him.
Well, two points to make, I guess.
Better than him going to ABC, you know.
I mean, I think 1 point, and rewatching Hypernormalization, which I'll talk about in the after hours, but rewatching that kind of definitely hammered this home for me. The idea that you know, when the Howard Beale character is just expressing the common rage, when he's kind of expressing this sense of anger, of powerlessness. And he's saying, you know, I don't know what to do about it. Like, I don't have an answer for everybody. But because, but you just get up out of your chair, yell, I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to take it anymore. And, you know, when he's doing that, they're fine to commodify it. The second it's met with collective political action, which is sending, I guess in this case,
letters, phone calls and letters, right?
Clumsy Gerald Ford, a bunch of letters, and it stops a merger. They realize, oh shit, this is actually political action. This is people taking action and stopping our merger. And obviously, I don't think they would have stopped it if it was a rival firm or a different company. But like the idea that kind of this rage, this wall thrashing, as I used to call it when I was talking about Jimmy Dore, but like, you know, this wall thrashing kind of anger that doesn't do anything, but like it's kind of this new leftist mentality where you're just like, I'm angry and I need to tell everyone I'm angry. And did you know that, you know, all of these companies are consolidating and CCA fucking sucks and all of this sucks and I'm angry about it. Nobody gives a fuck. They're like, I'll commodify that. When it's like, hey, can you stop a deal that's happening right now? Here's the specifics. Take political action. That's when it freaks everybody out.
Yeah. Well,
and I also wanted to touch on
it's like Robert
Duvall. Well, the Mouse tongue hour is okay as long as you don't hurt a corporate merger. That's the point of the movie.
The ostensible Black Panther like representation of the like American Communist Party, like she's like, hey, this motherfucker's hurting my ratings. Like,
well, she's Angela Davis. She's Angela Davis.
She's specifically Angela Davis, but it's a super merch version. Like it's a version of like, hey, you're gonna make a whole lot of money doing this, and like. It's nuts that like what's so great about this script is that it shows like how she still gives a damn about her message, but she's like, hey, we need these ratings to be good, otherwise the message isn't getting out and the party isn't getting this money.
Well, that's not. At the end of it, she doesn't give a fuck about the party. She says the party isn't going to see any of this money, and she's literally just it's saying like it's pretty much saying that you're subsumed, right? Like anti-capitalist resistance.
The machine eats her up. Whatever allegiance he had to like her actual revolutionary tactics and when that became a branding exercise. And I think that's but like she's on board, which is like, I mean, it's articulated as getting the fuck out of here. But it's crazy because it's such a slow burn, because like when you see them like negotiating the contract and they're in this basement, right? And you got like the great Ahmed like sitting there like with his sunglasses. At one point they're talking about distribution rights, whatever, and he like shoots off a guy, like, give her the distribution rights, right? Like, and it's played for comedy, but then you also have like the Paddy Chayefsky stand-in on like the staircase being like, I can't believe you motherfuckers. Like, this is supposed to mean something. Like, what's wrong with you?
And she,
right?
Also, she's you know, I think it does, it shows also that, like, you know, liberation armies and kind of this Angela Davis character are both, they're kind of all these black characters that are going through poverty. Like they make it clear with Diana's statement about like, well, isn't this better than kind of just passing mimeographed, you know, pamphlets out on ghetto street corners? And she realizes like, yeah, all right, so now we have a huge network to put our message out on. But by that point, it's the only person that doesn't really need any of that money is the you know, is the heiress that's kind of been kidnapped by them and done the Paddy Chayefsky thing where she kind of fully believes in the message, because of course she doesn't. she's just like a white heiress that could have as much money as she wanted. She's like, haven't you seen our film on the the class status of prisoners? And she's like, well, fuck that. And she's realizing that her distribution charges, you know what I mean? Like, as someone that's kind of stuck in this constant web where anti-capitalist resistance gets subsumed. But then at the same time, the only thing that can really actually piss off people like Robert Duvall, and I wish that we had talked. I mean, we'll talk about it, I guess, in the after hours because we're a minute over. But this kind of almost godfatherization of corporate America, and I don't think Robert Duvall would have necessarily hit the same way if The Godfather didn't come out 4 years before that. I think that since it's 10:03, we should probably cut it here, and then we're gonna have on the Movie Night Extravaganza Twitch, we're gonna continue this conversation in a lot more detail.
And are we going out with the?
Yeah, we'll go out with Conan's song.
Hey, if you
right.
want to see something that has absolutely nothing to do with what we just talked about, here's all the 80s fantasy movies we're going to talk about this month.
Hey, there's nothing I enjoy more than putting the capitalist realism of my childhood into my outros.
Network, everybody. It still slaps.
And listen, we're gonna go live on the Movie Night Extravaganza YouTube and the Movie Night Extravaganza Twitch. Please subscribe to Movie Night Extravaganza. Please subscribe to This Is Revolution on all platforms. Presumably everyone's watching it on that on the This Is Revolution channel rather than Movie Night Extravaganza channel. If that's the case, please please go over to the Movie Night Extravaganza channel and give us some love. But anyway, we will be back next month to talk about another movie. Haven't figured out what movie yet, but thank you. Left is best.
Thank you, guys, and we are out.